Hi, welcome to another edition of Greensboro Glimpses. You know, I probably should say right here at the beginning that if you hear a strange noise in the background, the city of Greensboro has done some work in the building here and in our studios, and it's put some sounds of water or something going through the pipes. I hope it won't be too offensive, but we notice it, and you may hear it during the program, but nothing to worry about. That's what it is. You know, most people who live in Greensboro are aware that there's an awful lot going on in our city right now, and has been for quite some time. Much of that is either sponsored by, driven by, organized by, or promoted by an organization called Action Greensboro. And that's going to be the focus of this particular program. I'm very happy to have as my guest the Executive Director of Action Greensboro, April Harris. April, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, April's an old hand at doing this. You know, we've done a program on Action Greensboro, I guess it was well over 2 years ago, and I think Susan Schwartz was still the director at that time. But we've got a lot to talk about because a lot of things have happened since then. And let's just start by talking about you a little bit. You have had what I think is a very, very interesting career. Native of Greensboro, graduate of Page High School,
Yes.
UNCG,
Yes.
and then you spent about 10 years in banking, didn't you? You were a loan officer
I was.
for a bank.
I was.
Was that your major? How did you get started in that?
My major was political science,
Okay.
and I knew when I moved away and worked as a banker up in the Northeast,
Right.
and had an opportunity to move back and decided to go to graduate school and got a master's in public affairs, because I knew when I came back to Greensboro I really wanted to do something work-wise in the community, and so that was a perfect degree track for me. And just after that I got my first job in my new career, my second career. So
Yeah, you were with downtown Greensboro.
I was.
And then you were with the city of Greensboro.
I was.
Based right here in the Cultural Center.
Right.
And from there, I guess, went to Action Greensboro.
Yeah, there's a theme there. It's
Yeah,
all
there is a theme.
Greensboro.
Right there, we could almost call you Ms. or Mrs. Greensboro,
Oh,
right? Yeah. Well, let's talk about Action Greensboro. As I said, there's so much that Action Greensboro is involved in. Remind the viewers how this got started. It goes back to, by the way, you've been there since January of '08, right? Almost
have.
a year and a half, a little over a year and a half
Yes.
now. And this got started back first part of this particular decade, 2000, I believe. 2001 is a
2001,
direct
right.
result of the McKinsey report. Refresh our memories on that.
The McKinsey report was a study into how Greensboro was going to forge in the years ahead. So thinking about during that time period, we were shifting from a manufacturing economy to a service-based economy or a knowledge-based economy. And McKinsey took a look at what our environment was like and what we might do to react to that, and how we might fare in the years ahead. So when the word came out from McKinsey that we needed to pay more attention to how we were doing with economic development, the foundations that sponsored the McKinsey study wanted someone to step up and sort of create a plan of action, but really found that they were the ones who really needed to step up, because they were very passionate about the work and felt like it was time to form an organization that could make some change happen in our community. So the foundations formed the organization called Action Greensboro, and took a look at the recommendations from the McKinsey study and developed a plan of work that lasted up until about '06. And it's an organization, I would say we really would love to work ourselves out of business, but
Do you see that happening?
it would be a great thing to know that we didn't need the work of Action Greensboro.
Well, you're being very nice, but I think, in all fairness, we have to say the McKinsey report was not too flattering about
No,
Greensboro.
it was not. And
Yeah.
it said that we needed to rethink the way we do business. We need to think about how we retain and attract young people here. We were rapidly losing a lot of the folks who were coming here for college, and we need to also rethink what businesses could thrive in this new economy. We could no longer rely on a manufacturing base, and needed to begin thinking about new ways of creating jobs because we were losing so many. So as a result of the McKinsey report, also Action Greensboro merged with the Greensboro Economic Development Alliance and the Chamber and became the Greensboro Partnership.
Right.
So we're all working together. That was a really great result, I think, because we're working in tandem on a lot of economic development issues and we're not overlapping.
And you are funded by those foundations, is that
We are.
correct?
We're funded by the foundations and also get funding from the business community too
Okay.
for many of our projects.
No tax money involved, right?
No.
Yeah.
Some
I
of the
think that's
projects
important.
have partnerships with public entities,
Right,
for
right.
example, the park and the Greenway, but not our operations, no.
I think that's important to know because that's a concern a lot of people have, particularly
Mm-hmm.
now, is exactly how our tax dollars are being spent. But it's great to have this organization that is so focused on making Greensboro come alive and making things happen, and you're really doing a tremendous job at that. How do you determine your agenda? What determines the things that you go after or the areas that you emphasize?
Well, I would say from the very beginning, the focus was on the community and how we would form a program of work based on suggestions from the community. I think you could come up with 1,000 different ideas on how to make Greensboro healthier and attract jobs, but to really hear it from folks in our community who are in touch with those things every day is very important. So during those first few years, Action Greensboro spent a lot of time with different task forces, community task forces, and developed recommendations and projects from those task forces. And a lot of community leaders stepped up and led those efforts. There were many, many successful things that came out of those first years. Then now as we begin phase 2, we did the same thing again, developed some recommendations in a few different areas than before, but again, have a lot of business folks at the table. A lot of the academic community too is really stepping up. So we're seeing a little bit of a change there, and we're working even more strongly with local government. So our partnerships, I think in phase 2, just continue to grow every day.
I want to talk more about phase 2, but before we do that, I looked and found about 3 pages on the internet of accomplishments of Action Greensboro since its inception. What would you say have been your greatest successes, if that's the right word, so far?
Well, there are the visible successes that many people know us for. We spearheaded the development of Center City Park, which really came out of the master plan for downtown that said we needed a central gathering place. And if you've been there lately, it's just an amazing place.
Yeah.
We see all kinds of folks every day enjoying the park, and it provides a real oasis right in the middle of downtown. And we still own the park. We manage it on behalf of the owners.
We being Action Greensboro?
Action Greensboro does. A couple of the foundations own the park.
Right.
And just really, it's been a very enjoyable experience. We're in our 3rd season.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is, I think, a great success. I do think our young professionals effort has been very successful. That is called Synergy. And we have about 1,300 young professionals that are tied into that group in some way. They do anything from just simple networking and socializing events to a leadership initiative. They're hosting a candidates forum this fall. They do kickball and softball. It's just a great way for somebody, especially if you're new to town or if you're just starting into a career, to meet other folks that are in that same phase of life. So we really are reaching out to that set and just have a terrific group. And really, I think what we're getting from that, we're fostering a lot of new leaders in our community that can carry the torch in the future years. So it's terrific to see.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, because that was one of the things that was a wrap on Greensboro for a long time. We weren't attracting or holding the younger professionals, the younger people that we had. Do you think we are doing a much better job in that now?
I really do.
Yeah.
I really do. And I see us forging even stronger partnerships with the 7 colleges and universities we have here. So we begin to think as an entire community, and instead of having the academic institutions being more isolated than where the community needs are. I think in many ways it's probably a national trend. We see the colleges and universities having more service learning and leadership opportunities in the community for students, and in turn they become more engaged. They might engage with a group like Synergy, meet other people, and decide that Greensboro is a terrific place to stay.
Yeah, it was almost like the giant woke up. And I understand the history of Greensboro. We were a textile or manufacturing-oriented economy, and we had Burlington Industries with big company headquartered here, Cone, a lot of those. And these schools were here, but unless you were directly connected with the schools, it was almost like people just sort of took them for granted. Then all of a sudden, one day we woke up and said, hey, Look at here. Look at what we've got.
Yes, it's really an amazing thing. I
Yeah.
think we are the only city in North Carolina to have 2 major universities.
Right.
And it is also a very important economic development tool. So if we're talking to a company that is considering relocating here, we have an amazing talent base. Then 2 research universities here. So if we need to have some special attention to a certain level of technology or engineering, for example, at A&T, we've got the skill set to make that happen for a company that wants to relocate here. So it really is an important thing for our community in terms of economic development and the quality of life. I mean, the cultural opportunities that a university and a college give us, and just the general intellectual capital that we have in the community is really an amazing thing, and it is one of the strengths that we should continue to build on.
Absolutely, no question about it. Central City Park, the future of that, is it complete? Are there additional plans? Will it continue to grow, or will there be new additions, or is it, pretty much what it's going to be?
Well, it is landlocked right now, and I would say the future development we'll see won't necessarily be within the park itself. It's for the most part complete. But what we hope to do is what a lot of urban parks do, is inspire development along the edges.
Okay.
A park becomes even more alive when we have people living around it. Center Point is the condominium development that just opened right at the park. And we have a number of other parcels around the park that are right now parking decks that, in future years, those could become potential developments. This building is a terrific building. It'll be interesting to see what it transforms
the cultural
itself
center
into.
that we're in
Yes.
here. Yeah, right.
We are finished with the park and do general maintenance and things like that, and continue to accept donations for small things, but they won't be major. We're adding a couple of bike racks this summer, that kind of thing.
Well, that's important too, particularly for bike riders. Before we get specifically into Phase 2, as we stand right now, given what's been accomplished and sort of the way you see things, what would you say are Greensboro's biggest needs right now?
Right now it's jobs. I think that is probably the biggest need that we have. And we're not alone in that, of course.
Right.
It comes on the heels of this transfer from a manufacturing economy, and then we have the national economy and the state that it is. So that's probably the biggest need. And then perhaps secondary to that would be probably some infrastructure needs. Transportation is such a strength of ours. We have the urban loop that is being constructed right now. That'll just continue to add to our strengths, and we really need to forge ahead. And then to capitalize on what we have at the airport. So those transportation needs related to the airport, new firms that might want to locate because of Federal Express. We've got to pay a lot of attention to that in the next few years.
Does Action Greensboro get involved much with our neighboring communities, Winston-Salem, High Point? Or are you pretty much focused right on Greensboro?
Because the foundations that fund us are Greensboro foundations, we tend to be focused just on Greensboro. One area that we expand out throughout the county is our public schools effort. Okay. So we do rely on High Point and of course the whole school system to help us with our program called Businesses for Excellence in Education.
Let's talk about Phase 2 now. I believe you said you have 3 major thrusts in Phase 2. What are they?
We do. We are thinking about initiatives that we can work on in higher education, public schools, and the center city. We add to that sometimes transportation, but as part of the Greensboro Partnership, we have our other teammates to really help work on that. So Action Greensboro itself is thinking about projects in those first 3 areas for the most part.
Okay, well, let's talk first about the center city. What do you see on the horizon as far as the development in the center city is concerned? The Greenway, I guess, is one of the big things.
Yes, the Greenway is a fabulous project, and we're so excited to have finished part of Phase 1 down on the south end of the 4.8 mile loop that's planned for downtown. And it just opened just a couple of weeks ago. People are already using it, and the